What's good? What are we doing today? I'm back with another reactions video. Today I'm going to be doing basically if the military sank the Titanic. I know it's a crazy conspiracy, but today we're going to go over and see if it's possible or what could it be. First time here, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and also put your recommendations in the comment section. Let's jump straight into it.
You all know the story. It's about 11:40 p.m. on April 14th, 1912, and Britain's largest passenger liner, the RMS Titanic, finds itself in a bit of trouble. First, there's a bang, followed by an eerie period of silence, and before you can say, "Blimey, you just hit that, old sport," the unsinkable ship starts taking on water. Just over 2 hours later, the Titan of the high seas goes under, and just over 1,500 people acquaint themselves with Davy Jones's locker. It's a bad day indeed for all involved. But a century and a bit later, we can all laugh about it. Or can we? Because what if everything you thought you knew about the sinking of the Titanic was wrong? What if there was no catastrophic iceberg impact? What if someone wanted that ship to go down? What if Jack and Rose didn't even exist? Just kidding. But really, there are a lot of things you don't know about the Titanic. The word on some dimly lit streets is that the ship's destruction involved power, greed, and ultra-rich families. Was there a religious curse on the ship, or did it even sink at all? Do you think that's crazy? Trust us, there are believers. They are out there, spreading the word on internet forums. Today, we'll do a deep dive into their theories. Let's start with the possibility of a giant piece of floating ice not wrecking the ship, but the military doing it. Okay, so you all know World War I started in 1914, and you know the Titanic went down in 1912. But did you know that at this point in time, Britain saw Germany as its biggest threat to dominance in Europe? Did you know the German Emperor Kaiser Wilhelm II wanted nothing more than to build a bigger, better naval fleet than Britain, a country that proudly claimed to rule the waves? When the Titanic went down, Germany already had very powerful U-boats, one that could sink a huge passenger liner. Around 3 years after the Titanic sank, a U-boat destroyed a British passenger liner off the coast of Ireland, a sinking that killed 1,198 people. So, would it be too much of a stretch of the imagination to ask if a U-boat sunk the Titanic? Was Germany flexing its muscles? Was it gearing up for war? This theory might sound far-fetched, but trust us, some people give it a lot of credence. It's arguably more believable than some of the far-out theories you'll hear later. After the accident, both passengers and crew were grilled by the US Senate. Some of them said they had never heard an impact at all, but they did hear what sounded like explosions under the water. And get this, passengers in lifeboats said they saw a rescue ship approaching, a ship they thought was crewed by Americans coming to rescue them. But the American ship was nowhere near. So you have to ask yourself, what was that ship they saw? A few sailors on the sinking Titanic also said they saw a ship in the distance, and now some people think that that could have been a U-boat surfacing for a short while to admire the damage it had caused. Okay, so let's move on to a theory that the Titanic didn't even sink at all. And this isn't even the strangest theory. The British had built another massive ship called the RMS Olympic. This beast was the older sister of the Titanic, and both ships looked very much alike. In fact, they were almost identical. They were owned by an outfit called the International Mercantile Marine Group, and that was controlled by none other than J.P. Morgan, the Wolf of Wall Street in those days. In case you're wondering, the Titanic was registered as a British passenger liner, but it was actually owned by the American Morgan, as was the Olympic. In 1911, the Olympic collided with a Royal Navy ship, and the accident caused severe damage. The theory goes that because the Olympic was blamed for the collision, its insurers, Lloyd's of London, wouldn't pay up. That cost the International Mercantile Marine Group a lot of cash. To make matters worse, the other big ship, the Titanic, wasn't yet finished, and the work on it had been delayed. This meant no ocean liners in the water and a big loss of money. So, what to do in that situation? Some people believe that the Olympic was patched up, not perfectly, but at least it could sail. After that, it was kind of a switch. They said that the damaged Olympic was the new Titanic. The theory sounds more believable when you hear that the crew on the Titanic said the ship listed to port in the water. That means tilted to the left, which is what would have likely happened if the damaged Olympic was in the water. Okay, so why would they do that? Well, to have at least one ship in the water, for one thing. But there's more, and this is where it all gets insidious. You see, if a damaged ship sailed along icebergs over a long distance, there was every chance it would sink, and it would look like an accident too. So the insurers would have to pay that. If it happened, JP and his company of wolves on Wall Street would get their cash for the banged up vessel, and they could put the real Titanic in the water. Everyone's a winner. except the 1,500 plus dead people. Some theorists believe that they didn't actually want people to die because the damage was so small JP and friends thought everyone would be rescued when it went down. This all sounds like a Dr. Evil kind of plan, and there are more than enough people that want to really believe that all those bankers are forged deep in the pits of hell. But there is one reason, and one reason alone, why the tale doesn't ring true. You see, the construction number of the Titanic was 401, and the construction number of its sister was 400. When bits of the Titanic were pulled from the ocean bed, they had the 401 construction number on them. When the Olympic was turned into scrap, nowhere was the number 401 found. JP Morgan isn't off the hook yet. Another theory is that he wanted some people on the ship dead. Sinking the Titanic to slay some enemies might seem a bit excessive, but you have to remember that some people think the Earth is flat and Queen Elizabeth is a lizard inside human skin. The conspiracy theorists say JP wanted very much to establish the Federal Reserve Bank in the US, but in his way stood a handful of people that didn't think it was such a good idea. 3 of them were the wealthy and powerful people named John Jacob Astor, Benjamin Guggenheim, and Isidor Straus. Guess what? They all went down with the Titanic and JP got his bank. The theory asserts JP was supposed to have a seat on the ship, but he canceled the trip at the very last minute. Oh, what good fortune. You read that on Reddit and now you know bankers equal evil, JP Morgan equals murderous villain. But wait for a moment before you go on the dark web and buy yourself a Kalashnikov to take on the world's bankers. A little bit more research tells you that his cancellation was due to the fact that he was having some problems getting his art collection from Europe over to the States. There's also evidence that when JP canceled, his alleged mortal enemy Guggenheim hadn't even bought his ticket. As for those 3 guys being against the establishment of the Fed, there aren't any news clippings from back then that had them going on record saying they were. In fact, Strauss discussed the Fed in the New York Times and said he was for it, not against it. No good conspiracy theory could float without the Rothschilds being mentioned, so we should add that some people believe it was that family that was behind the murder of the wealthy triad. Okay, so if JP Morgan didn't do it, then who did? We're guessing the first thing that comes to your mind is an ancient Egyptian mummy. Those damn mummies still sticking their noses in everything. This is how the tale goes. One of the people that died on the Titanic was a guy named William Stead. He was a newspaper editor and spiritualist who held some pretty far-out views. Hey, he's said to be the father of tabloid journalism, so far-out views were his mainstay. He was a brave man too, seeing that he helped women and children into lifeboats and gave his life jacket away. He was actually last seen with one of the guys we just mentioned, John Jacob Astor. Both of them were holding onto a raft, but their feet iced up and they went under. Prior to going on that trip, Stead had often talked about a mummy's curse. The curse goes back to some English dudes that bought the mummy case of the Princess of Amun-Ra, and after that, things didn't go too well for them. The case got back to England eventually, but there it sat ready to curse the country. To cut a long story short, everyone who bought it or went near it died, or so we're told. In 1912, a rich American was said to have bought the case, and he didn't believe in all those silly superstitious tales. He wanted to ship the thing over to the US, on board the Titanic. It's a fact that the tabloid creator Stead wrote about what later became known as the unlucky mummy, and so people put 2 and 2 together and got 5, saying that because Stead died, the mummy must have been on that ship. It wasn't. Still, one of the survivors on the Titanic had a story to tell. He was back on dry land. He described how Stead had been telling people on the ship how the mummy's curse was going to destroy London. This made headlines. The Washington Post ran one that went, "Ghost of the Titanic, vengeance of hoodoo mummy followed the man who wrote its history." So much for the tabloids being the only ridiculous news sources. Let's get 2 things straight. No mummy case was on that ship. It's in the British Museum as you watch this. Stead was patently crazy, but we'll forgive him for giving away his life jacket. So if a mummy mad that her coffin had been plundered didn't do it, then who would make an obvious next choice to blame for the sinking of the Titanic? God. It was God that did it, but not the Catholic God, a Protestant God. You see, the construction number for the Titanic was 401, as you already know, but some people say it had another number on the hull that was 390904. What does that say if you look at it in a mirror? No Pope. The story goes that one day someone in the yard was straightening his tie in the mirror and he saw the number. My God, he thought it's a sign that that ship is doomed. The poor Catholics that built the ship in the Belfast shipyard were sure that it meant the Titanic was in for a rough ride. The truth is that the number never actually appeared on the ship. Another fact is that the people who worked in the shipyard weren't Catholic but Protestant. It's also believed that the no Pope rumor didn't start circulating until the 50s. So if it wasn't the fault of the Germans, or JP Morgan, or a mummy, or God, then who could it have been? Well, we can blame the iceberg if we want to be very boring and factual, but we can also add something to the story. You might not know that one of the seamen that was supposed to sail on the Titanic was named David Blair, or Davy to his friends. He was one of the guys that sailed on the ship when it was making its first trial runs, but just before it took that perilous journey over the ocean, he was assigned a different job. He was really bummed about it too, writing to his sister saying, "This is a magnificent ship. I feel very disappointed I'm not to make her first voyage." Blair got off lucky, but did he do something naughty after getting the snub? It's a fact that when he left the ship, he took some keys with him, keys that opened a locker to where a pair of binoculars were kept. This was the only locker up where the crow's nest was, and that's the place you really need binoculars when you're looking for things like, I don't know, icebergs. 2 of the lookouts actually survived, and when Congress asked them if binoculars would have helped them to better see that iceberg, both men said yes, most likely. Congress asked, "How much sooner do you think you'd have seen it?" To which one man replied, "Enough to get out of the way." So there you go. Human error was likely to blame. We're sorry to disappoint you. The theories are much more fun. Now you need to watch 50 insane facts about the Titanic.
That's all I'm gonna do for that video. Look, put your comments in the comment section and let me know what y'all think about it. I think it got hit an iceberg. I mean, there might have been something involved with it, maybe some human error, but other than that, I mean, let's be real. Again, put your comment in the comment section. Let me know what y'all think. Check y'all out.